So we're going to take a brief look at some of the challenges faced by, I guess, companies up and down the land in the current situation we're in, particularly for the IT admins, because clearly a lot of their workforce, if not all of them, are working remotely from home. So I guess if we start with, in general, what are you seeing in terms of the changes in patterns? As I say, clearly everyone is, well, a lot of people working from home, but how is that, impacting on what you're seeing in terms of IT usage?
Oh, there's been an enormous change, and for some of our admins, it's been a real opportunity for the IT team to shine. Let's not forget that without today's technology, many companies would have had to stop working. From an IT infrastructure perspective, everything has been inverted. So where remote workers were previously the minority, they're now in many cases the majority. So access switches and in-office Wi-Fi are kind of sat idle, where the firewalls and the internet routers and the remote access infrastructure have been working overtime. So this has been reflected in the questions our users have been asking us as they've shifted their monitoring focus from kind of internal to external.
Okay, and I guess, on the most basic level, clearly once upon a time, plenty of people, I guess the IT industry, there was an element of flexible working, hot desk and stuff, but in general, obviously, an office environment now, everyone's remote. So how do you sort of enable or help people communicate effectively? Because that's a pretty basic thing, yeah?
So I think perhaps one of the things that's really defined this, I've been working in a variety of technologies around this space for many years. And I think there's been a much greater appreciation that communications isn't just about the basics to get the job done. It's not just about email and line of business applications. Because this has been an event that's been measured in months rather than weeks, there are more sort of social aspects and soft elements of working that need to be considered. For many, it's been the mix of the corporate and the social, providing a range of options that the user community can use for each use case. Here at Paessler, even our Friday beer at Fear, the Friday afternoon beer has been virtualized. And tech is being used for social communication. And I think that's really one of the key differences in recent terms. One of the most common questions we've been asked is how organizations can monitor video conferencing tools, as we're using now, with our sensors for services like Zoom, Teams, and GoToMeeting, generating a great deal of interest. That's what admins are demanding. These have moved from being nice to have to being core services.
Okay, and alongside obviously the employee communications, I guess another issue is connectivity, the network connectivity, because clearly you can't impact directly, I guess, what goes on in people's houses, but the minute they're hooked up, hopefully to the enterprise network, are there ways that you can sort of assist in terms of the performance of connectivity and or the network?
It's an interesting one, that, because, for our admins, as if it wasn't already a full-time job, sort of like supporting the corporate infrastructure, now you've got to figure out and possibly prove to a user that your systems are accessible and performant without becoming responsible for all of the IT devices they've got in their home, all their consumer IT, and do it at a time when you've got within that home network potentially conflicting users. The kids are going to want to do homeschooling and the like. So you've got to take a step back and realize what you can be responsible for and what you can't. So start with the corporate stuff. And in order to optimize your network traffic, you need to start by understanding what is going where. PRTG allows you to get that visibility of how users and applications use your network resources and allow you to make insightful choices going forwards. Right now, this means that, for users in this scenario, the PRTG can give admins an insight into how their valuable bandwidth is being consumed and by whom. So, but, there are limits as to what can and cannot be done.
Sure, and I guess a part of that also is allowing and managing access people maybe are wanting to access the, you know, the enterprise IT resources, servers, etc., applications. How can you sort of help, I guess, with that process again when you've got a lot of people maybe all simultaneously, you know, asking for this and that?
Well, this is absolutely our bread and butter, you know, and this is where, you know, our PRTG users absolutely have the advantage. They are able to see the entire stack from the hardware through the hypervisor, through the OS and up to the app, but in a service-oriented view that allows the admin to see, A, is it working? And B, if it's not, where in the chain is it broken? And one of the things that when we talk with our admins, I always urge them to do is to share with their user community, their customers, in an appropriate way, a traffic light availability view. Show them what's available, because that's going to help them. If they know that email isn't working, they're not going to try and fix it. And that potentially means that things are going to be much easier for them. And do you know what? In these difficult times, it's a great way for IT to communicate with the user community at a time when everybody is remote. It helps them work out if the problem is with their system or the corporate systems. It's also, and our IT admins always love this, a great way of reducing duplicate support tickets. Because if people know that you have a problem and you're working on it, they don't log a call, they don't try and get in touch, they let you get on with it.
I guess we can't have a conversation about IT without mentioning security. Now, clearly, managing security within an office or within the enterprise network is complicated enough, but again, and even, you know, bring your own devices, etc., that's been coped with. But suddenly you've got, as you said earlier, you know, a whole host of home-based devices of varying degrees of security or not, I guess. Is that a bit of a nightmare to manage in this environment?
Without it wanting to sound like the daily government briefing, it is all about hygiene and distancing. There should never be the opportunity for people's consumer systems to become the weak link in a corporate IT policy. And that same healthy digital hygiene is key. I would argue actually though that availability is just as important as security. Because what I've seen is that when corporate systems aren't accessible or performant, then we tend to see end users stepping around corporate policy, using shadow IT and bypassing corporate policy, you know, taking files offsite on USB sticks, working on them offline, all the things that we really don't want them to do. So make sure it's available, and that's a critical element in making sure that they are accessing your systems in the right way, maintaining good digital hygiene.
Okay, and I guess it's slightly related to that, data protection is perhaps a slightly wider topic than just the security, but clearly a lot of people doing stuff remotely, maybe, you know, actually on their own devices in terms of rather than on servers in the corporate environment. I guess data backup, well, again, that's another massive topic, but it's even more critical now. You know, you're at home and the kids spill something on your laptop or wherever and you forgot to pay. So how do you manage those kind of data protection issues?
Oh, can you imagine? I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than working, sat looking out in the garden, the sun's shining, the kids are playing it, and then you avoid the law of the beautiful weather, and then you spend all your day working and then you lose your data. You have to make sure that from a user perspective, it just happens, that it is the default behavior, that they don't have to do anything, that their data is saved, it's backed up, it's replicated in an appropriate way, so that they don't have to do anything. And then you've got to make sure that all that is working. And, you know, that's not so difficult, but it's something that's often missed. So I'd say that's the way. And then the mechanism, it really does depend what the app is, what it is that user is creating, but make it just happen.
Okay, we covered a fair amount of ground. Are there any other issues around this sort of remote networking and how admins can deal with it, or is there a key takeaway or two from what we've discussed, I suppose?
I've been thinking about this, and I think there are many positives that have come from this dark times. Personally, I've been a home worker for 15 years, And I know, and I know that I'm far more effective working from the peace and quiet of my home, avoiding the commute. There are so many positive elements. For me, I would encourage organizations to allow people to take a flexible approach, to trust them, to shift to that model where work is something that you do rather than somewhere where you go. Of course, a critical part of this when it comes to monitoring the supported systems is give admins the tools that they need so that they can get an insight into the health and availability of their systems with monitoring platforms. So that's what I would say.
And I guess just to finish, as you say, we've had the sort of initial bringing in, as I say, of people's own devices and stuff, and people have just about got to grips with that. And now this may be the next one. Do you think this is here to stay, this remote working, flexible working, because people do, or do you think at the earliest opportunity you'll ever want to go, phew, thank goodness that's over, we can get all our resources back in house under control? Or do you think the benefits, as you say, may well outweigh the disadvantages, and therefore companies will commit to this sort of more flexible remote working?
Well, what we've seen in our HQ in Germany, where we're probably a little ahead of where we are in the UK, and our offices are now open to a skeleton crew, is that there are some people who feel that they are more productive in a working environment. And that might be, you know, maybe they have young children, they may be in a noisy environment at home. But what we've seen is when we've given them the opportunity to choose, possibly as much because of everything else that's going on in the world, people have chosen to work from home predominantly. And I think that, you know, having that balance of allowing people to choose is absolutely the right one. I think that we'll see many organizations continue that, and it will become a foundation that they'll build on. Certainly from the people I speak to, there are few negatives of working from home, bar trying to bridge that social aspect. So here to stay from me. Another 15 years, please.
Yes, indeed. That will see us both retired, maybe, I don't know. But no, I appreciate your thoughts today. Thanks very much indeed, Martin.
Thank you for your time.